Welcome to the Rap Soul Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of music that moves our hearts and gets our feet tapping. This is the intersection of rap and soul music from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. We appreciate you for listening. Share this podcast with a friend or family member who loves music as much as you do. The podcast is hosted by 12 Kyle. Next up, the Rap Soul Podcast.
But they made hip hop commercially viable. I mean, like, hip hop was growing at the time. And again, it was something that the elders told us was going to be a fad. I remember grown-ups telling me, oh, it's just going to be like breakdancing and disco. It's going to be gone in a couple of years. And we literally would go to school and come home and hope that rap was still around when we got home. Welcome to another edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Again, this is the Rap Soul Podcast. This is the intersection where we have discussions about music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to rap, hip hop, soul, and R&B. Simply put, folks, it's the best music podcast that you have never heard. That is until right now. Shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube as well as Spotify. Man, check this out. Just the other day, I was scrolling through social media and I came across this meme and it stumped me. The meme simply read, Run DMC versus NWA. Who had the biggest influence in hip hop? And I'll be honest. As a fan of both, is something that until I saw that meme, I had never even considered. I'm someone who, fell in love with rap because of Run DMC. And simply put, they're my favorite. I think they're the best hip hop group ever. That being said, there was a deeper love and a deeper appreciation for NWA, who I would discover some 4 years after hearing Run DMC for the first time. And so, again, the thought had never even crossed my mind to even think which group had the bigger influence on hip hop. But after seeing that meme, I said, you know what? Let's bring this to the table. Let's have a discussion. There's no right or wrong answer, but I wanted to share my thoughts and kind of like what I came up with to do this episode. And so again, I am someone who loved and fell in love with rap in the early 80s. And I've been a fan ever since. And, these two groups helped shape a lot of what I loved about rap, particularly early on. It's, cool. It was brash. It was fun. It was just something that, we gravitated towards. And we wanted to get it more and more on a daily basis. But Run DMC and NWA are two different groups, to say the least. But I wanted to, like I said, bring this to the table, bring this to the podcast so we could have a discussion about it. Now, if we're talking about mainstream hip hop, the edge probably goes to Run DMC. And here's why. They changed a lot of things. They brought rap into the mainstream in the 80s. Their collaboration with Aerosmith and the song Walk This Way helped introduce hip hop to white audiences. They had a major endorsement deal with Adidas. They established, street fashion, with the fedoras, the Adidas, the tracksuits, gold chains. It was a style. It was a look. From what I understand, they got that look from Jam Master Jay, rest in peace. And, because he looked like, a lot of cats around their hood in Hollis, Queens. And they influenced many artists from Public Enemy to LL Cool J on down the line, Beastie Boys, the whole nine. But now if we're talking about shaping the sound and the attitude of today's rap music, the edge has to go to NWA because, they made gangster rap popular on a national scale. They changed their, lyrical content, and it was about streets, and it was about, social commentary, and it was about things that we saw or they saw on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, they helped launch the careers of Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, MC Ren, groundbreakers, trailblazers. They directly influenced the explosion of West Coast rap in the 90s. And then they birthed, and their influence, spread across a bunch of artists like Snoop, Kendrick, The Game, and countless others. They helped establish a blueprint of gangster rap. So in saying all of that, a strong case can be made that, a lot of today's rap is, has been influenced by NWA. So again, I wanted to bring this discussion here because there's no right or wrong answer. But what I want to do is look at both sides. Question: if Run DMC never existed, would NWA even have a stage to stand on? And if NWA never existed, would today's rap even sound the way that it does? You can make the case that Run DMC had a bigger overall influence on hip hop, making it mainstream, but NWA had a bigger influence on the sound and the themes and the attitude of today's rap game. So let's start there. All right. So let's break it down like this. You got to understand that a young 12 Kyle would turn 12 years old the year that Run DMC came out with their debut album in 1984. And then he would turn 16 the year that NWA came out with their debut album in 1988. So there's a 4-year difference. But honestly, it's years, it's light years apart. So, of course, and when you see the title, who had the bigger influence? Now, we always say influence and impact. Those are things that are very tough to measure. And the reason being is that what may be influential to you may not be influential to me. What may impact you may not impact me. That being said, let's just keep it simple. I'm going to start with the definition of the word influence. And I'll read to you as follows. Influence means the power or capacity to affect the character, the development, or behavior of others indirectly without giving a direct force. As a noun, it means the ability to create or affect or change opinions, actions, or decisions. As a verb, it means to have an effect on someone or something, or to persuade someone to change. The key types of influences: personal influences, shaping how friends or family think through trust, respect, or charm. Social and digital influences, inspiring trends or guiding public opinion through digital platforms or a large following. Common synonyms: to sway, to affect, to control, power, or impact. That's the definition of influence. So again, it really depends on who you are and how you view influence. There's no real way to say it's right or wrong. One thing I will ask is, can influence be defined by record sales? To me, no. And the reason being is that in rap, record sales didn't equate to, at least where I come from, my era, record sales didn't equate to being dope. And the reason being is that, and I always use this example, Vanilla Ice sold like 10 million copies. Vanilla Ice has sold more records than Rakim has ever sold. But I don't think that there's anybody with a brain that would say Vanilla Ice is a better rapper than Rakim. Rakim is the god, of course. So record sales, nah. your influence isn't measured by record sales. Obviously, if you sell more records, you're probably exposed to more people. So there is a tinge of influence there, but nah, not here. Cultural impact. Yes, there's some cultural impact when you talk about influence. And so when you start thinking about both of these groups, they had cultural impact. They had the influence of fashion, as I mentioned earlier. They influenced sound, NWA in particular. Run DMC was very influential on the business tip and longevity. Both groups, have been around. Now, NWA hasn't been around as a group as long as Run DMC, but in spite of only having 2 albums, NWA is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well as Run DMC. So Run DMC went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame first, and NWA went in after them. And so let's make the case for Run DMC. Run DMC, you can make the case for them being the most influential in hip hop because they brought rap music to MTV. And I say that as someone who remembers getting MTV in 1981, having cable TV for the first time, seeing Run DMC on MTV somewhere in 1984, maybe 3 years after we got cable TV and MTV, was a breath of fresh air. I knew very little about them, but at that time, there weren't a lot of black acts on MTV. And to see them do that, and I want to say King of Rock probably was the first video that I saw, or it could have been Rockbox. I can't even remember, to be honest. But they were the first ones to, cross that line, particularly as far as rap is concerned, because obviously, artists like Prince and Michael Jackson were getting airplay on MTV, but to have a rap group, and keep in mind, rap was something that at the particular time in 1984 and 85, the critics thought that it was only going to be around for a little while. So for them to open that door, I think that says a lot about Run DMC. I mentioned earlier they had a partnership with Adidas. We all know the song My Adidas. If you were around or alive at that time, if you didn't have a pair of shell-toe Adidas with the fat shoelaces, I don't know what you were doing, because we all had it, myself included. And I'm not even an Adidas kid. I was a Nike kid, but I had a pair of shell-toe Adidas because it was everybody. We all wanted to look like them. I mean, like, there might not have been a cooler rap group than Run DMC at that time. There might not have been anybody cooler in music, to be honest, to me. And again, I'm very young and impressionable. I'm 12 years old when they come out. I am I am enamored with this group and their look and their style and their flair and what the kids would later call swag. But they made hip hop commercially viable. I mean, like, hip hop was growing at the time. And again, it was something that the elders told us was going to be a fad. I remember grown-ups telling me, oh, it's just going to be like breakdancing and disco. It's going to be gone in a couple of years. And we literally would go to school and come home and hope that rap was still around when we got home. But yeah, Run DMC, they did so much. They had influence on imaging and branding and presentation. Like, everything was about their look and their style. And not only besides that, they delivered great music. I mean, I guess that goes first and foremost without saying, but the music that they gave us was so dope. I mean, so you couldn't deny Run DMC and their influence and their impact on hip hop. They definitely influenced me. I never wanted to be a rapper, but if I was going to be a rapper, I wanted to be in Run DMC. I don't know what I could have done, but I would have done something to be in that group because, again, they were the epitome of cool. So the question is, can hip hop become a global culture without Run DMC? If you take away them being on MTV, if you take away the Adidas, does hip hop become globally accepted without Run DMC? It's a very fair question to ask. Now, let's make the case for NWA. Obviously, their groundbreaking album, Straight Outta Compton, comes out early 88. The greatest year in hip hop, by the way. Prior to that, frontman Eazy-E album comes out. I want to say Eazy came out maybe Straight Outta Compton came out late in 88. I can't remember. I get the two confused, but I know Eazy came out first with Eazy Does It. But Straight Outta Compton blows the doors off of any and everything. It was a street record that we were clamoring for to get airplay on the radio, but they couldn't play anything because they were cussing. With the exception of Express Yourself, I don't even know that radio stations would even dare to try to play an edited version of Straight Outta Compton or any songs on it. While they were not the first gangster rappers, they really issued in the rise of gangster rap. They took it to another level. I mean, a totally different level. And as someone like myself who grew up far away from Los Angeles, I grew up in a small town, Florence, South Carolina. The thing that was impressed upon me was the fact that this music was real. I mean, like, I thought everything Eazy-E said was real. So when he talked about slapping somebody, I figured he slapped somebody. When he talked about shooting people, I figured he shot a bunch of people. I didn't know. And I always say, like, I had no idea where Compton was. Compton could have been in Michigan. I did not know. But it was authentic. It was real. It was just different. I mean, like, we had never heard or seen anything like it. And not only that, but it was a rebellious music. And so you think about it, you're 16 years old. I am at this point fresh out of a divorce from my parents are going through a divorce. And, I'm kind of getting into stuff or whatever, not trouble, not bad trouble, but just getting into stuff. I'll just leave it at that. But this music spoke to me, and it spoke to me because I knew it wasn't something that I probably was supposed to be hearing. In fact, my mom told me when she heard me listening to it, for me to turn that shit off and throw it in the trash. And I famously walked past the trash can and acted as if I was putting it in the trash, and I put that tape back in my pocket. And I learned to listen to it when she wasn't around, or listen to it very low in my headphones. But, it became for me something that if you were going to tell me not to do it, I was going to do it anyway. And this music just fed that beast inside of you. And obviously it launched the careers of Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, and Ice Cube. And as I mentioned a little earlier, supreme influence on West Coast artists. And it helped the West Coast dominance that would soon come. So the question is, does modern rap, today's rap, exist in its current form without NWA? If you take NWA away from the equation, does today's rap even look or sound or feel like it does without the influence of NWA? That's a valid question. Now, when you think about it, there is a family tree. There's a tree that grows, and there's artists that came from these trees of both of these groups. And when I say came from the tree, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that that they were responsible for, these groups happening or these acts happening, but they all kind of came in at the same time, and they were heavily influenced and benefited from each of these groups. So when you think about Run DMC, you've got LL, right? LL comes in right behind Run DMC. The Beastie Boys, same, right behind them. Public Enemy. And those are some of the greatest acts in hip hop, period. particularly at that particular time. So that's a part of their tree, not direct tree, but they're in the same crew, if you will. With NWA, I mean, you have in that tree, Dr. Dre as a solo artist, Ice Cube as a solo artist, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Kendrick Lamar, The Game, Nipsey Hussle. I mean, that's a hell of a tree. And again, I'm not saying it as if these artists were birthed from them, but they're all in the same kind of clique, if you will. So that leads us to the ultimate question. Who had the biggest influence on hip hop? Was it Run DMC or was it NWA? Run DMC built the highway. NWA decided where hip hop could get on once you got there. Run DMC made hip hop bigger. NWA made hip hop harder. Run DMC opened the front door. NWA remodeled the house. So again, who had the bigger influence on hip hop? You tell me. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday. What I need you to do is go to the website, therapsoulpodcast.riverside.com. Subscribe to the newsletter there. I promise you we won't spam your emails. But there you can get to all of the streaming platforms as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. This concludes the episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the podcast on social media. And feel free to continue this discussion on our Reddit page. More importantly, share this podcast with a friend or family member who loves music as much as you do. Until next time, 5,000.